Hi, I'm Jacob Stein, and I'm a partner in Allianz Los Angeles office, and I head Allianz private client practice. And in today's reel, we'll talk about using equity strips for asset protection. This is a question that comes up very frequently from our clients. They hear about equity stripping, and they want to understand what it is and how they can use it. So let me explain. In asset protection planning, right, what we're trying to do is protect assets from claims of creditors. And one way to do that is to make assets less attractive, make the assets somehow less. So then the creditor, the plaintiff, would not want to go after that asset. So when we talk specifically about real property, like your home or an income producing property that you own, right, the equity that you have in the property, which is the difference between the value of the property and the debt that's on the property, that is what the creditor can go after, right? The equity that you have in the property. And if the property has no equity, there is nothing for the creditor to pursue, and they will not be able to go after your property and will not want to go after your property. So an equity stripping transaction would be some way for us to reduce the equity that we have in the property. And the only way to reduce the equity that we have in the property is by increasing the debt, right? We have no control over what is the value of the property, but we do have control over how much debt the property is encumbered by. So how do we increase the debt? Well, an obvious way maybe to go to a bank, go to a mortgage lender, right? And get extra debt against the property, right? Maybe refinance your existing loan, pull some cash out. Maybe you get an equity line of credit and the lender records an additional deed of trust against the property. So we look for different ways to encumber the property more and more and more, right? And reduce how much equity is in the property. But what do you do, first of all, if you cannot get that mortgage, if you cannot refinance, maybe your credit is not good enough, you're in litigation, you don't have any earnings right now, right? There's some set of events in play that prevent you from getting a mortgage. Or maybe your property is so valuable, there's so much equity in the property that you can never pull out enough debt through traditional banking accommodation, right? So let's say you have a property that's worth $10 million. You can't borrow more than 75, maybe 80% of equity. So you'll have another $2 million of equity left always, right? And that's an attractive target then for any creditor to go after. What do we do with this remaining $2 million of equity? What if we cannot refinance, or maybe refinancing is just too expensive? So one solution is what I call a paper equity strip. And a paper equity strip, as it may sound, is just a transaction involving creation of paperwork where no money exchanges hands, meaning that you go to a friend or to a legal entity you control or to someone like that, and you get from them a line of credit. It's a line of credit you will never exercise, but the line of credit is then secured with a deed of trust for the full amount of that line of credit, for the entire 10 million of the value of the property or whatever you need it to be, right? And you record the deed of trust against the property, and at least it creates the appearance that the equity is gone. Please understand that when you have a transaction like this, where no money exchanges hands, is just you're creating the appearance of that being placed on the property, right? That the deed of trust for the equity strip is not really supported by an actual transfer of money from a lender to you. There is no substance there. If you have a plaintiff that is aggressive enough, diligent enough, they're going to ask questions, they're going to investigate, they will eventually find out that you never actually took any money from that loan. And then that lien on the property is going to be worthless, and they will be able to reach that equity. But you will be surprised how often plaintiffs and creditors do not do that due diligence. They look at the property that our client owns, and they see that, well, it appears that the property is fully encumbered. Well, that's not an interesting asset for us to go after. Maybe that's not an interesting debtor for us to go after. And then they never pursue a lawsuit against our client in the first place, which is the best possible kind of result. And if we are able to combine this type of an equity strip, right, which again, just drawing up some paperwork, which is why I call it a paper equity strip, with them transferring the property out of our client's name into something like an irrevocable trust, well, that's a very formidable asset protection structure. And in practice, these structures work really, really well. If you have any questions on asset protection planning, my name is Jacob Stein, and I'm happy to help. Thank you.